Hi there, hope you're doing fine. In this video, I'm gonna show you how to create a music video in Unreal Engine 5.2 by using the movie render sequence and audio reactive Niagara particles. And I will show you how to set everything up so audio and video is in sync, and you can render that out with ffmpeg to get an MP4 video file in the end. Okay, so let's dive into it. First, I'm gonna create a new project. Let's call it music video test. If you have a project already that you want to use, you can skip this part. Now I'm opening up the Epic Launcher to add some asset packs to the newly created project. Again, if you have your project already set up, you can skip that part, but I will use my audio reactive FX particle systems for that. Okay, let's add them. Okay, now we have all assets installed and we can open up the project. And we're gonna create a new level. Test level. Okay, let's open that up. And now what I'm gonna do now is first I create a camera. Okay, Cine camera actor. And then I want a skylight. And if you select the light here, you can use a cube map for lighting, and I use the daylight ambient cube map, which is part of the engine content. So you always have that unless you want to use your own for that. Okay, now I'm gonna just add assets to that map here that we're gonna use for our render sequence. Here's a quick explanation of the audio reactive effects assets, because they have a few things in common that are specifically built for usage in music videos or live performances. So if you select one of those, make that bigger here, that's smaller. So I've selected this in the background, and if you type LVJ here, then all parameters that are beginning with LVJ are like master parameters. So I really quickly explain that. So the first one is animation manual. That means if that's off, the thing just animates by time. If you enable that, it will stop, because if that's enabled, you need this anim percentage, and move that. Why do we have that here? It's pretty simple, because that way you can time the animation fully from the sequencer. I will show that later. But for now, let's turn that off. Okay, then animation speed is just for automatic animation. So if you have it manually, then that does not have any influence, but that's just one means 1 second or 1 beat for the full animation. So 0.1 means 10 times slower, 10 means 10 times faster, and so on. Then we have the emissive, that's the overall emissive. So if I set that to 0.1, okay, what I was doing here is that the minimum emissive value was set to 0.1, so it was still glowing, but I want it to be 0. Okay, now I'm going back to those things here. Here, emissive is the overall emissive, but emissive audio means that's a linear interpolation. So 1 means it's fully lit by the audio. So if there is no audio, it will be at the minimum. If there is full audio, it's at maximum. If I turn that to 0, however, it's always fully lit. So you can see that as how much effect does the audio have on lighting, but it's usually at 1. So for instance, if I take 0.9, you can see it a little bit, but it's dark and it will get much brighter with audio. Again, here you see that getting brighter because of the eye adaptation value here. Okay, let's put that to 1 again. Good. Then there is fade okay, let's just to show that, put that back to 0. Then here we have fade percentage. That all those effects, they have a way of fading in and fading out, because you cannot just make it transparent like a layer in a video software. You need to make it fade out and fade in somehow. So 0 means it's actually playing. -1 means it's gonna fade in. 1 means it's faded out. So it goes from, it starts at -1. Oops. You cannot see anything here. Now -0.7. You see it coming in from the bottom. -0.5. Okay, you see it building up. -0.2. It's almost there. 0, fully faded in. And then the same thing into the other direction. So 0.3, 0.5, 0.7, 0.9, and 1, it's gone. So there are usually also parameters that you can adjust to adjust the look and feel of the fade out and how it's fading out. Okay, and the last one here is spectrum to animation. Again, that does only work if you do not use the manual animation. However, if you use that, 0 means the spectrum has no effect on the animation. 1 means the spectrum animates everything. So it's standing still. Let's open up our level sequence and start it. Okay. Let's search for spectrum to animation strength. Let's turn this up to 10. So that's how much the animation reacts to the spectrum. And this LVJ spectrum to animation is if we use that animation. So that's again linear interpolation between we're not using the spectrum or we're using the spectrum. So 0.5 means 50-50. It's still animating, but if we start the sound, you see it's starting to move faster. Let's increase the strength. Now you see. Okay. Let's make that loop here. Actually, I'm gonna turn down the sound a little bit. Okay, now spectrum to animation 1. Now it's only animating when it's getting a sound of the right frequency. So a little bit more explanation here. Those systems, they usually have two spectrum analyzers. One that drives the animation, where you can set one frequency, spectrum global frequency, so that's from 0 to 1 in terms of minimum frequency and maximum frequency here. So in that case, 0 means 100 and 1 would be the 10,000. And then for all the elements here, you have another spectrum analyzer where you have a bandwidth. You have start and end, so this goes from 100 to 10,000, so from 0 to 1, uses the full spectrum range. And that is used to light the elements here, or animates individual elements. And for each of the spectrum, of the two spectrums, you have a threshold and that means at which level of audio it starts reacting. So if you, let's start that here. If I increase the global to 0.5, okay, that's too much. It's never have that. Okay, now it's only moving the whole thing when it gets over this value. If I return that to 0, it's now always moving because it's using every signal it gets. Okay, so I use 1. The same is for the individual elements. And then there is the decay value. That means how smooth it is. So more decay is more smooth. 0, it's very choppy. And 0.8 is very smooth. Okay, now I'm gonna create a level sequence. Level sequence under cinematics, and I will drag that onto the map. This will create a level sequence actor. You don't really need that actor, but it's nice to have in your map. So when you click there and then you go here and go to search, wait a second, go to search, you get to the level sequence, or you can just double click here and open it from there. So it's just handy to have it. What we now still need is some audio. Using this audio here, I drag that into the project. Okay, now we're gonna open up the level sequence by just double clicking it. This will open the sequencer window. Then I take my audio, add it here, and it will create an audio track. If you hit Control and if your mouse cursor is here on this navigation and you hit Control and the mouse wheel up and down, you can scale that, and it will always scale around this cursor position. So scale that down, go to the end, set the end here to the end, now go there. If you use right click on that, you can drag that, so left click will move that cursor here. So we go to the end of the track, and move the locator, and so the red one is the end part where the sequence is stopped or looping, and that's just the current playhead. So we move that to the end. If we go here to this one, show time as seconds, you see how long it is. Okay, what else do we need? We will drag our camera here. You can actually have multiple camera shots or different cameras changing and so on, but we will only use this camera. Let's add another track, add a fade track. That's very useful because you can just fade it in. So a simple fade to black, create points wherever you want, and then 0 means visible, 1 means black. So now we have this fade in at the start and at the end. And now let's have a look at the assets. So which one do I use here? Let's use this one here. I drag that river of meshes to the sequencer. Now you have a track for it here. Then add track here, Niagara component track, click add track here again, and then we need, where is it, fade percentage, LVJ fade percentage. Good. Okay, so we will put it to the start. We will have -1. Oops. Make a keyframe here. I copy that over here, and then another one, and this will be 0. So now it's faded in. Copy that again, and in the end it will be 1. Okay, so now we can, wait a second, I just mute the audio because that's annoying. Okay, so we won't hear any audio, but you will see the audio here that it's playing. Okay, now you see this background thing here has faded in. Okay, here is this value needs to be 0, and this needs to be 0 as well. So from -1, here's also -1 because it's just, let's remove that. So from -1 to 0, it's fading in. From 0 to 1, it's fading out. Okay, so it's fading in, animating. And now it's gonna fade out. Maybe let's also show the manual animation. Let's take this one here. Again, add track for the Niagara component, then go add another track, LVJ animation manual, and we move to the start, enable that. So now it won't animate at all. You see it's completely non-animated. Add another track, LVJ animation, anim percentage. Okay, good. Let's start with 0, then move forward, add 1. So this always goes from 0 to 1. So you can have just, let's do it like that. Copy that, add 0 again, so it will be ping-ponging a little bit. I did not time that at all, so it will look weird, but just for proof of concept, it should do. Okay. Okay, now let's go to the start. It should now be animate forward and then backward, like, yes, exactly. So in order to render the sequence, you can click here on this icon here. That will open up. Okay, that's the old interface. Movie scene capture legacy. Great. Okay, that means one thing. I forgot to add the movie render queue plugin. So we go to edit, plugins, type in movie, okay, movie render queue. Okay. Now let's save everything, restart it. So now if we hit that, or if we press those buttons, okay, movie render queue is selected. If we hit that now, it opens up the movie render queue window. So this can be saved. So if you click here, save queue as, and save it, this will create an asset here, this one here. If you double click it, it opens up that editor. In the movie render queue, you can have a lot of render jobs in a queue, basically. That's why it's called like that. And we have our one sequence here. Here is the sequence, here is the level. That should be the correct level for the sequence. And then here are the render settings. So that is where it's really important. Okay, so we're not going to edit that here, but I will go to one of those here, and there is a render config folder. Note that I've just recently updated all of those asset packs to 5.2, and what I did here is also I added an example for doing exactly what I'm showing here to each of those packs. So they will contain a map for a small sequence, then a level sequence, and also the correct render settings for that. So I'm just gonna go in here and go to render config, and okay, there are two: audio reactive music video and audio reactive music video ffmpeg. I will use that and copy it to my content folder. Copy here. Okay, let's call that test RC. Okay, now to edit that, we double click that and open it up. I will not go too much into detail with all those settings here, but we have PNG sequence. You can enable alpha if you need, then WAV audio we need for that. Command line encoder, this is where ffmpeg is used. Deferred rendering, that's the standard rendering method. Here accumulate includes alpha. I think you need that if you want to render alpha. I'm not sure if that's actually needed or not, but yeah. Then anti-aliasing, this here is one of the most important settings because you're gonna want to override it. So click override and then use whatever fits here, except temporal. Do not use temporal. Also, temporal sample count here needs to be 1. Spatial sample count can be any number you want. That will increase the quality. I use 4. And then render warm-up frames is also always good to render a few warm-up frames. The reason for not wanting to use temporal anti-aliasing is that this freaks out audio, so you get totally out of sync. So don't do that. Then console variables. I have this one here, so sequencer audio ignore audio sync during world time dilation. That's probably not needed except you're doing time dilation. Then audio max desync tolerance I set to 0, just in the hopes of having it as smooth as possible. Audio, use audio clock for audio desync. I set to 1, so to use the audio clock. I'm not sure if they actually help, but I have it there. There in the settings, you can deactivate it if you don't want to use it. And then screen percentage, that's just to increase the quality. So 200 means 2 times the size you set for rendering is used, and then that's scaled down. So I think 200 is probably a little bit too much. 120 may be sufficient, but it drastically increases the quality of your renders. Then game overrides, that's just, I think that's the default settings here. And then output, your output directory, file name format, and the resolution. Just be sure that that matches your camera settings. And here, this one is very important. You need to have the frame rate at 60. So I don't know why, but if it's at 30, it's gonna be out of sync somehow. I don't really know why or how. It seems to be an issue with the rendering thing, but if you set it to 60, it should be totally fine. And to be safe, use custom frame rate, enable this, then it will always be set to 60. And yeah, the rest is default. So to enable ffmpeg for your movie render queue, first you need to go to project settings and scroll down on the plugins to movie pipeline CLI encoder. This is only here if you have the, wait a second, movie, if you have this plugin enabled, otherwise it won't show up and the whole movie render queue thing doesn't work at all. Okay, so here are the settings. So the first one is the path to your ffmpeg exe. Then that's just a help text, the video codec you want to use, the audio codec you want to use, the output file extension. And then this is, wait a second. You can import and export it from file. I already saved an export, so that looks better. So command line format, that's the basic ffmpeg call. And those things here in the curly brackets, they are replaced by video inputs, for instance, is replaced by this. Then input file and frame rate is set by the movie pipeline. Audio inputs is replaced by that. And here again, we have the input file from the pipeline. And then we have the quality settings. I think those are the quality settings here. So the movie pipeline sets a quality, and that is taken from low, medium, high, epic from these here. So you can set it here. Okay, now after we've done that, you can go to your render settings, and if you added this one, command line encoder, you can now use that. So wait a second, I just copy that here into this file. So here, render settings, I just write that here so you can read it, so don't do that. Okay, so these are additional command line arguments that are here. So this part is put here. The output path is this one here, and with the name. So you add this here. I think it's here by default like that. So if you need it here, just type it from that screen. Otherwise, you're fine. Then here you can delete the source files if you don't want to keep the image files. And you can set the quality. So that's what I said earlier. Those are those here. And they're added here. Okay. So now, once you have that, you can render it, and after it's finished rendering, it will take all the images and create an MP4 from the images and the audio, and that's it. We want to use this render config here. So we go here, type test RC. Now we have that here, and to be safe, always save your render queue for later. So I can now close that, open up our render queue, and have that here, and then I gonna render local. Okay, so now it finished rendering the images, but is in export state, which means it uses ffmpeg to create an MP4, in that case, of the video. Okay, and if I now click here into the folder, so that's our folder with the images that are all black for some reason. I don't know why, that's probably the alpha setting, but if I click on the video, okay, that's it. Have fun.